Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Bernarda. Thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll kind of pick a topic and we'll go exploring.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ed, for the invitation. So I'm talking to you from Zurich, Switzerland. I'm from the French side of the country originally, traveled around, came back through the other door, through the German speaking door, and where I'm making a living here. And my work has been, in a nutshell, I started my career at the World Economic Forum in Geneva, the Davos World Economic Forum. And I was always, inspired by the idea of bringing different kinds of people together to facilitate the process where we would come up with a new and better solution together. And so that kind of stuck with me. I left and opened or created my own practice, applied on questions of leadership, innovation, strategy, especially around reinvention of organizations that were looking for a new path, forward. And lots of other things, but in a nutshell, that's what I do.
So, if we're going to reinvent something, what is it that we're reinventing? Or is it the idea? Is it the relationships? Is it the structure? What is it that we're reinventing when you bring a group together and say we're in a reinvention process?
Yeah, so there's the object of reinvention could be anything, but I think the secret of reinvention is to come ourselves from a different place, right? So if I'm just thinking the same and I'm going to rehash the same ideas, etc., I'm not going to reinvent something truly. I'm going to kind of stay in the same type of frequency, you could say. But if I go and interrogate myself, into what I feel should happen that is different, that is happening now, I think it opens up a door for something new, and that's both an individual and a collective process. The idea of finding ourselves in a new place so that we can bring something new to the world.
To what extent is this idea of reinvention really a resetting of our mind? I mean, like looking at having a different mindset about what we do.
Yeah, I think it's all about that, actually. I don't think anything happens without it. And I find it interesting, though, this word mindset, because I think people sometimes think, oh, I've been thinking this way and I'm going to be thinking that way. But sometimes we forget that it's not just about thinking, actually. Right. The word mindset, depending how we define it, could mean, a thought process. For a lot of people, it's a thought process. But I actually think we have to go beyond thinking nowadays. We have to mobilize a different kind of intelligence. ChatGPT is doing all the thinking nowadays. So we have to mobilize a different kind of intelligence. And what I like to talk about is to move away from, let's say, approaching things from an engineer's standpoint to an artist's standpoint.
Oh,
an artist relates more than he explains to their object of creation or the topic of exploration.
Yeah, I like that very much, because what I have found is that when we go through periods of transformation or transition, and it's affecting the institutions of business or society, that we can't really just fix that. It's going to be different, and it needs a creative imagination applied to that for us to see where can this go. And I would, I suspect that it's not the individual being creative, it's the group finding ways to be creative. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's really, I think it's really a connection of, perfect storm between individuals finding their own kind of center and their own creative impulse, you could say, and then connecting with one another in the group. I don't think anything really happens if just the individual is creative,
Right.
or if we try to say, hey, this group, there's a lot of groupthink around, and a lot of collaboration is a very overused word. I think true collaboration happens if every individual is alive and in connection with their own creativity and finds their role in the collective. I think these two things need to happen in order for something at the collective level to happen that is different from the status quo.
Yeah, I agree with you. My first experience of this was 40 years ago. And I was to be a part of a business association that had a broader mandate than just business, but it was really the whole community that in the city where I was. And there were 45 of us on the board, so it's a huge board. And this board functioned as one. I mean, I'd never seen a group operate at such a level of unity where the president or the chair or whatever that the terminology was not running it. In fact, they were facilitating the level of conversation and imagination that could be applied. And if you go 40 years since then, the amazing development of that community the development of that community is actually quite amazing, and a credit to that board 40 years ago.
What do you think was happening there? What was organizing the whole like that?
I think that the leadership put aside their own ego and their own need to be seen as the leader, and they really created an environment where everybody could contribute, and everybody felt like they were a part of something larger than themselves, and that they had a purpose that they shared together. It was a shared purpose of a hope for their future, their community. So it was a remarkable experience.
Beautiful.
And it was what triggered for me the whole idea of being a leadership guy.
Okay. Yeah, it's a subtle thing, but it's really amazing when it happens, and you feel it. I always say the true criterion, success criterion of a workshop is you leave the workshop and maybe there's been some results and some outcomes, but you actually feel that something happened there. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you feel like, oh, something happened there, and it's hard to describe, but it's been worthwhile and it's going to lead somewhere special.
Have you ever been in one of those workshops? You're not running, you're just a participant, and it's going really badly, and there are people trying to take over, they got some kind of anger, they got something, and all of a sudden someone begins to say things or act in a different way, and all of a sudden all that anger, all that negative emotion is dissipated, and the group comes together and they're able to do some things that they couldn't have done at the beginning of the meeting. You ever been in one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because everybody kind of feels it and nobody really dares do something about it until the courageous person comes in and bursts the bubble, right? And it's like, oh, okay, thank you very much.
Well, that's what real leadership is, I guess.
Yeah, true. Having the courage of seeing and naming when things are not going the right direction, I guess. Yeah.
So what was the trigger? What was the instigating incident or experience that set you on this path that has led you to where you are today? Where did that start?
There's been different starts in my life. I think different moments.
Yeah.
They've all been connected to a personal realization, nothing to do with work, but more of a moment in my life where I realized, oh, actually, I could do more, or I could do, or there's something else that I feel I can participate in the world. As a kid, it was being maybe discovering, maybe being a sensitive child, and then discovering, oh, there's actually power in seeing things that others maybe don't see so easily, and therefore to bring that to
Mm-hmm.
a group situation and to name maybe stuff that's maybe not visible, and all of a sudden realizing that, a bit like the example you use, you know, you see something, you name something, and all of a sudden something happens that unleashes something better. So yeah, I had a, and it was both always, I realize now I can put better words to it now, but it was always an individual thing for me, kind of my own individual process of finding myself, understanding myself, and realizing that a lot of people are trying to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then also because of that sensitivity, I guess, to see how much of the external world was impacting me, was influencing me. And so I always had this sense of, well, could we actually create something that has a better influence on ourselves, you know, because, well, who says we cannot do something that's different and that participates in this I guess nurturing us individual and our creativity and our well-being, etc. So there's always been a bit of these two sides to it, the individual and the collective aspect.
Did you have, as a child, did you have an artistic bent as a child? Did you like to draw, or did you play music, or did you have any of that creative expression as a child?
I think yes, but I didn't discover it until much later in my life, my late 20s, I would say.
Uh-huh.
But because I had experiences at school where this wasn't a I don't know exactly what happened, you know, but I remember a bunch of times in creative classes where I was kind of pointing, you know, as the guy who, I was very successful in all of my other classes, but for some reason the singing and the drawing weren't my strength at the time. But I actually discovered that there's a professor actually once who came to me, a teacher who came to me, and she kind of gave me something to do. And she called me back to her desk afterwards, and she said, okay, show me what you've done. And I showed her, and, you know, I had been like kind of secretly kind of working on my own thing without participating much. I went to show her my drawing, and she gave me a 10 out of 10,
Yeah.
which up until now for me was, wait, I'm not a creative person, you know? Well, how can you give me a 10 out of 10? But then somehow she recognized something that had not been, I don't know, had not been part of, you know, the other stuff that we were supposed to do in a drawing class. So she kind of pointed to me that there was something there that was creative, and you know, but in its own unique way. So it was kind of a parallel process for me, you know, and I had an ambiguous relationship with it.
But now you look back on it with real pleasure and a real sense of,
Yeah.
it's sort of defining you. I had a similar experience, but I was probably 10, 9. I was fourth grade, and I was that active, you know, energetic kid, and I would have to stay after school, you know, 2 or 3 days a week, and walk the mile and a half home. I mean, it's so. But my teacher, Millie Brown, I'll never forget her, would have me write pages out of the elementary school dictionary, and I just sit there and write. That was my punishment, you know. I had to stay after school for 45 minutes. But what I recognized later was that was the birth of my love of words,
Mm.
and I got to spend some time with her, I guess 30 years later, no, 20 years later, you know, and it was so I don't know, it's so rich and wonderful to be able to say to her, thank you for giving me this gift, you know, and that's what your teacher did. But you know, now let's translate that into, how does the CEO of a company do the same thing for his or her employees, you know, to say, thank you, look at what you have done. This is really great. to facilitate their own imagination so that they contribute at a higher level to the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it so critical to create spaces for this is a little, if we translate into the I work a lot with innovation, and we know that in order to do something different, we have to create a different kind of space with different rules, different rhythms, different ways of connecting with one another, of exploring a subject of work. And so I think this metaphor of creating a new, it's not only a metaphor, it's a literal thing as well, but to create a different space where something different can happen is very important. Very hard for people to go into a certain kind of room and being yelled at because results have not been met one day, and then the next morning they go to the same room and they have to do something creative. It's tough.
That's a very good insight, because oftentimes our lives are that kind of chaotic. It's
Yeah.
where there's not consistency, and yeah, that's very good. So, do you have a definition of what leadership is? Have you kind of come to say, this is what I see leadership to be?
Yeah, so I don't have a written definition, but if I have to come up with one now, I think it's about leadership. It starts with self-leadership, which to me means knowing myself as much as possible in terms of so developing my own awareness of myself, which includes all of the patterns that might be there, the habits, but also the spark of genius that I'm capable of, not shying away from that. And then I think showing up is a very important thing in any situation, with one other person, with a group of 1,000, showing up from that authentic place as much as possible. And an authentic place, to me, is very there can be vulnerability, but there's a lot of strength and a lot of integrity and gravitas in that. So I think showing up as an authentic, self-aware person would be the beginning of leadership to me.
I like that very much, because my definition is, I see all leadership beginning with personal initiative to create impact. Difference that matters. So it's really something that comes from us as a person, as an individual.
Yeah.
And ideally, we structure our organizations to facilitate that from all our people. Ideally, it doesn't always happen that way, but that's kind of that would be kind of the horizon that we shoot for, is everybody feels like they have the opportunity to contribute, to make a difference, and when they do, to thank them and to celebrate their contributions.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to see that when it happens, and to celebrate that, because I worked with one company where for 20 years they had been the employees had been kind of pushed down and not allowed to be creative. There was no innovation going on. The senior level executives were committed to making all the decisions, so nobody felt any freedom. There was a lot of fear and turnover of the leadership, and a new guy comes in, and he wants it the exact opposite. He wants to free the people, and it was interesting watching that happen, because the company went from being a not very happy company to being recognized by Forbes magazine as one of the most trustworthy companies in the country. And that happened in a 2-year period of time.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
So I think when you provide the space for people to contribute, and they feel like it's coming from their own initiative, it's a fantastic thing.
100%. Yeah, something happens when people are given permission, so to speak, permission is always there, but to kind of officialize that, and they take it and they run with it. I think I see it with my own life, the difference between the moments where I was just helping on a project versus when I am directly accountable and responsible for it. It's just, yeah, something happens where all of a sudden you realize, wow, I can do so much more. That responsibility gives you wings.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. I'm curious about people and how they work. So when people come to you and they want to work with you, what do you think they're asking of you? What is it you think that they want to see as the product of their working with you? Do you have an idea? I've started asking this question of others because it's part of our own self-awareness is to understand, why are they coming to me? That question.
Yeah. So, well, I'm aware of what I can do for them. So I think there's a match when they come, and you're right that it's never really articulated that way. Yeah. But what I think I've come to see, and I wasn't really aware of it for a long time, but what I think I do is that I listen to people and I create some sort of a safe space through that. At the same time, see where the energy, the spark that, whatever the topic is, whatever the situation, there's something that is there that can all of a sudden find expression, that is looking for expression in this person, in this collective, this project. There's a spark there that if you name it, if you locate it, all of a sudden something happened, and then you can build things and workshops, etc. on it. I think for me that's the best match. So when people come and they may describe their situation in whichever ways, but if that's really what they're looking for, I think that's what they find in me. And then there are other situations where people look for other things, and we may not be a match, but that's I think that's when it clicks.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's a lot of fun when it does work like that. And the challenge, I think, for people like us is that we go to a social event and we're meeting people for the first time, and we're having to sell ourselves, and we know how to network and do that sort of thing, but oftentimes the people we're meeting are really not very self-aware about their needs and how and so we may have something to offer to them, but if they're not aware that they need that, it's really difficult. So what should we do in those situations to help people become more self-aware?
I mean, I'm not a sales guy at all, but I realize that what works in my kind of field is to tell a story, to talk about a story with some with kind of ideas woven into as a point of view about what should happen for organizations or in the space of innovation or in the world, etc. So that's where I feel, but I think it's a very personal thing, right? We're all made up differently. There's different styles. I've discovered for me that when I am when I'm invited to start there, that's where something can happen. And all of a sudden people, you're right, they might not have had a need, but all of a sudden they feel like, oh, I should, there should be something done in that direction.
They put themselves into your story is what I like that very much. That's very smart, because I think, everybody knows that stories communicate, but it's not about the idea. It's the kind of the feeling of the story that I think brings people into that process.
Yes.
Awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the sense of possibility the story conveys. that's really the magic, right? It's oh wow, there's something else there that I wasn't seeing that resonates with me, because I feel this sense of possibility all of a sudden for myself if I'm listening and tuning to that story.
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you do it how do you
How do I do it? Well, I do it. What I do is like what I'm doing here, which I'm asking lots of questions. For example, this is something I did. This is years ago. I was at a book event. I was promoting my book, Circle Impact, and this man comes up to my table. I'm in a bookstore, and I got a stack of books there, and he comes up and says, what's your book about?" He doesn't want to sound. He doesn't want to project that he's interested.
Yeah.
I say, well, it's a book for people in transition and businesses that are in transition that want to elevate the leadership capacity of their people. Oh, that sounds really good. I said, mind if I ask you some questions? So the first question I asked, I says, what do you do? He says, well, I had a support team for a group of software engineers. So how's your team? You got a good team? He says, yeah, I like my team. I like my team. I said, do the software engineers respect the work of your team? And his face dropped. No, they don't. All of a sudden, self-awareness is happening to this man. I said, do you think the company is clear on the impact that they're trying to achieve through the software that you all produce? I'm not sure about that. So, just by 3 simple questions, we open up the possibility for conversation. And so instead of creating a separate story, I'm asking him to create his story for me, and by asking those questions. And he bought the book, which is my goal. But I found it really fascinating when you ask questions about purpose. What is your purpose? What are your values? And then what are the relationships like within your team or within, and if you can answer those 2 and be clear about it, then all the other things begin to be understood in a different way. It's not simply the mechanics of the business or the structure of the business, but all of a sudden we see that there are all these other facets of the business that are really important for us.
Yeah, beautiful. I love how you give these fundamental inputs, and like you say, they create their own story and own realizations. Yeah, that's very good.
Well, it's just like us having a conversation here. We're meeting for the first time, and we're getting to know one another. And you tell stories, and I tell stories, and we find that there's some commonality here that then allows for us to have a basis for a continuing relationship going forward. And that's really the premise. One of the premises behind the Eddie Network podcast, which is I want to meet people. I want to meet people who have been introduced to me by someone else who we share a common friendship with. But I really want to find out who this person is, and I want to affirm them. I want to say, I appreciate who you are. I like what you're telling me, and how can I support you and what you do? I mean, that's kind of the idea that I see that so our relationship becomes a story in and of itself. I guess you're asking a question that I'm now processing. And so in a sense, this becomes a story that we tell by our first interaction with each other.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. Yeah, and the story is connecting dots, right? So it's creating new relationships between these different pieces of the story. So that's what we're doing, yeah, all the time.
So there's a story I want to know. So it's your story, and how did you come to be recognized by the Thinkers50 as I forget what the other terminology is, but you've been recognized recently. Tell us about that. And I want you to know that I'm asking this in honor of you to say congratulations to you, and it says something about what others think of you that you were given this recognition, and I think that's a great thing.
Thank you. Yeah. It was yeah, a very welcome surprise. So Thinkers50 is an organization that recognizes, they track and they recognize thinkers in the field of management, but it's kind of expanding to other areas, you could say, whatever contributes to organization, to the life of organization, business, and beyond business. And I was recognized actually once in November for their strategy award. So I was nominated for the strategy award, and this January for their, so they publish every year a class, they call it the Radar class. So
Radar.
it's 30 individuals, yeah, to kind of to watch for this year in terms of their thinking. And look, it was, I don't know exactly how the process works, what happens, you know, how the nomination or the recognition came about. But what I can tell is that it felt like it came at a moment where, it came at a moment where I was finally going out in the world with the stuff that I really want to say. And so, you know, this had happened just a few months before last year, where I felt like, okay, now, you know what, I'm going to be fully dedicating myself to this idea. And I could feel that it resonated with myself and with the audiences that I was speaking to, which is why I felt like, okay, I'm really going to go for it. And I felt that there was the same resonance in the way that Thinkers50 was talking to me about it, you know. And so it's this kind of thing that is, it's a little bit in the air, I think, of, you know, an idea that finds resonance in different circles, and you know, the rest happens, you know, different, yeah.
Does this bring you into relationship with people that you would not ordinarily be in relationship with?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's first of all, a nice community of thinkers here, which is very rich, and very actually diverse. I think it's getting more and more diverse, which is very nice. And then so I went, they have a gala dinner in London every 2 years. So I went to the one beginning of December, I think, found myself at dinner, and I met in particular one gentleman from Tokyo, or lives in Tokyo, Bangladeshi gentleman who lives in Tokyo. And I was sat next to him, and we started to talk about so some of the ideas, you know, that I work on. But he was talking to me about how he, in his organization, they're not thinking about a business purpose or even a societal purpose. They're thinking about civilizational purpose. And for me, this was, you know, we could talk about that another time. But I really believe in this. You know, I believe organizations shouldn't just be thinking about business. They should think in society and beyond. Yeah. And to me, to find a practitioner, a senior leadership guy, practitioner, talk about this, I felt like, wow, fantastic. You know, the world of organizations is really changing. And I felt a lot of encouragement in terms of, you know, how, in terms of the fact that there's a community of people that are really thinking big and trying to align all of these practical things that the business world does in a direction that's useful for society. So that's one example. I went to see him in January now in Tokyo, and we had a fantastic exchange. So yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
How exciting for you. And you know, that you have this opportunity. You know, the recognition is nice, but the opportunity for the building relationships with people, you know, worldwide in a more strategic way than simply just networking. We know each other, we have each other's business cards and that sort of thing. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. And again, it's like it was around ideas rather than transactions, right? Or
yeah.
So there was a story, there was a common field of sense making about the world, and from there there was there was a relationship, and that was born out of that. So it was very.
So how do you build from here and build your career from here? What's kind of the next horizon that you're going to shoot for that will take you in further into your career?
Yeah. So this is all kind of emerging right now. But the basic idea is that I think that the world of business needs a new language. And I would say it's not even the world of business, but the world of organizations in general. We've learned a particular language, and let's say business schools have been very good at pushing this language. It's a language that's taken us, to a place, but that is, I would say, not suited enough for the kind of world that we live in. And by that, I mean that I feel that this language of business is very good at it's very rational, it's very efficiency driven, it's very maybe even outcome driven, etc., which is all good. But given the, if you take it from the perspective of an organization looking for growth, or if you take it from the perspective of social and global issues that are around us, if you take it from the perspective of what we really want as individuals in our lives, I feel that we need another layer of complexity and subtlety to include in this language. So we need a language that allows us to deal with more complexity and more subtlety. And we can always keep this language of business, it's wonderful, it's practical, it gets stuff done. But we should also accompanying with the image I have is that, it's kind of ascending to a higher logic that includes other aspects, other dimensions of our life, organizations, and society, and just connecting with life around us, so that we can create value that matches that level. So that's what I'm kind of busy working on, a new kind of language for our times.
You remind me of another one of the guests on the podcast, and that's Manuel Lima. Do you know Manuel?
Mm.
You should get to know him. He I think he lives in Portugal. I know he's Portuguese, but I think he's written a book. He wrote a book that came out last year called The New Designer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But Manuel, I first met him about 15 years ago when he was doing he was traveling around doing a presentation on visual complexity.
Okay.
And it was fantastic, and we connected then, and he was on the podcast last year. I think he is thinking in the same way that you are, and I think the two of you, I'll reach out and introduce you to each other, because I think there's some synergy in what you're doing with what he's doing, and what he's doing with what you're doing. And you're close. If he's in Portugal and you're in Switzerland, you're close.
Yeah. And Portugal is a very nice place to go visit. So fantastic.
Yeah. Someday I will visit there. So, well, it's been great to have you on the show. And I want to end with one question. And I've been asking this, I haven't asked it every time, but I'd like to know, what's your hope for the future?
Okay, so it's got to be something around, well, my hope is that every individual finds their own way of their own unfolding. I like this word, unfolding, find their own unfolding, whatever context they come from. And to me, unfolding means that, there is, I accept myself as an individual, I accept whatever has been in my past, and I unfold my spark of genius, so to speak. And I hope that for people in any context. And I think that if that happens, then this is the basis for our collective institutions and ways of living together to change as well. So that would be my hope.
That's the civilization question there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that very much, and I totally agree with you. I think we're at that point where we need to help people take responsibility for their lives and for their communities, and support them in however they need to learn how to lead and how to do the things that they need to do. So, and I think that people are becoming more and more aware of that and more sensitive to the need for change. And I think you're going to be at the forefront of this in the future, and I'm excited for you, and I wish you well in the work that you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for hosting this conversation, relationship, news story.
And we can do this again, as often as we want. So, so thank you for coming on. And how can people find you in order to kind of connect with you if they want to have a conversation with you?
Yeah, so on my website, gregbernarda.com, and the language that I was talking about is we just created a new website called up-ruption. So it's going from disruption to up-ruption, bringing people upwards.
I like that, up-ruption. Yeah. Well, send me the links to all of that, and then I'll put it in the show notes, and we'll see if we can generate some communication there. So. Awesome. So thanks again for being here, and thank you all for watching, and look forward to seeing you again here on the Eddy Network podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.